Welcome to YQ Academy, REST API, Interview Questions and Answers. 1. What is REST Web Services? REST is the acronym for Representational State Transfer. REST is an architectural style for developing applications that can be accessed over the network. REST architectural style was brought in light by Roy Fielding in his doctoral thesis in 2000. REST is a stateless client-server architecture where web services are resources and can be identified by their URIs. Client applications can use HTTP GET/POST methods to invoke RESTful web services. REST doesn't specify any specific protocol to use, but in almost all cases it's used over HTTP/HTTPS. When compared to SOAP web services, these are lightweight and doesn't follow any standard. We can use XML, JSON, text, or any other type of data for request and response. 2. Mention some key characteristics of REST. REST is stateless, therefore the server has no state or session data. With a well-applied REST API, the server could be restarted between two calls as every data is passed to the server. Web service mostly uses POST method to make operations, whereas REST uses GET to access resources. 3. Mention what is the difference between AJAX and REST. AJAX. In AJAX, the requests are sent to the server by using XML request objects. The response is used by the JavaScript code to dynamically alter the current page. AJAX is a set of technology. It is a technique of dynamically updating parts of UI without having to reload the page. AJAX eliminates the interaction between the customer and server asynchronously. REST. REST requires the interaction between the customer and server. REST have a URL structure and a request/response pattern that revolve around the use of resources. REST is a type of software architecture and a method for users to request data or information from servers. REST requires the interaction between the customer and server. 4. What are advantages of REST web services? Learning curve is easy since it works on HTTP protocol, supports multiple technologies for data transfer such as text, XML, JSON, image, etc. No contract defined between server and client, so loosely coupled implementation. REST is a lightweight protocol. REST methods can be tested easily over browser. 5. What is a resource in RESTful web services? Resource is the fundamental concept of RESTful architecture. A resource is an object with a type, relationship with other resources, and methods that operate on it. Resources are identified with their URI, HTTP methods they support, and request/response data type and format of data. 6. What is purpose of a URI in REST-based web services? URI stands for Uniform Resource Identifier. Each resource in REST architecture is identified by its URI. Purpose of an URI is to locate a resources on the server hosting the web service. A URI is of following format. 7. How does microservice architecture work? Clients, different users from various devices send requests. Identity providers authenticates user or client's identities and issues security tokens. API gateway handles client requests. Static content houses all the content of the system. Management balances services on nodes and identifies failures. Service discovery, a guide to find the route of communication between microservices. Content delivery networks, distributed network of proxy servers and their data centers. Remote service enables the remote access information that resides on a network of ID devices. 8. Mention what are the HTTP methods supported by REST. 1. GET. It requests a resource at the request URL. It should not contain a request body as it will be discarded. Maybe it can be cached locally or on the server. POST. It submits information to the service for processing. It should typically return the modified or new resource. PUT. At the request URL it updates the resource. Delete. At the request URL it removes the resource. Options. It indicates which techniques are supported. Head. About the request URL it returns meta information. 9. Mention what is the difference between PUT and POST. PUT puts a file or resource at a particular URI and exactly at that URI. If there is already a file or resource at that URI, PUT changes that file or resource. If there is no resource or file there, PUT makes one. POST sends data to a particular URI and expects the resource at that URI to deal with the request. The web server at this point can decide what to do with the data in the context of specified resource. PUT is idempotent, meaning invoking it any number of times will not have an impact on resources. However, POST is not idempotent, meaning if you invoke POST multiple times, it keeps creating more resources. 10. What are disadvantages of REST web services? Since there is no contract defined between service and client, it has to be communicated through other means such as documentation or emails. Since it works on HTTP, there can't be asynchronous calls. Sessions can't be maintained. 11. What are the best practices to create a standard URI for web service? Use plural noun. Use plural noun to define resources. For example, we've used users to identify users as a resource. Avoid using spaces. Use underscore or hyphen when using a long resource name. For example, use authorized underscore users instead of authorized %20 USERS. Use lowercase letters. Although URI is case insensitive, it is good practice to keep URL in lowercase letters only. Maintain backward compatibility. As web service is a public service, a URI once made public should always be available. In case URI gets updated, redirect the older URI to new URI using HTTP status code 300. Use HTTP verb. Always use HTTP verb like get, put, and delete to do the operations on the resource. It is not good to use operations names in URI. 12. What are the best practices to design a resource representation? Understandability. Both server and client should be able to understand and utilize the representation format of the resource. Completeness. A format should be able to represent a resource completely. For example, a resource can contain another resource. Format should be able to represent simple as well as complex structures of resources. Linkability. A resource can have a linkage to another resource. A format should be able to handle such situations. 13. What are the disadvantages of statelessness in RESTful web services? Web services need to get extra information in each request and then interpret to get the client's state in case client interactions are to be taken care of. 14. What are the primary security issues of web service? To ensure reliable transactions and secure confidential information, web services requires very high level of security which can be only achieved through Entrust Secure Transaction Platform. Security issues for web services are broadly divided into 3 sections as described below. 1. Confidentiality. A single web service can have multiple applications, and their service path contains a potential weak link at its nodes. Whenever messages or say XML requests are sent by the client along with the service path to the server, they must be encrypted. Thus, maintaining the confidentiality of the communication is a must. 2. Authentication. Authentication is basically performed to verify the identity of the users as well as ensuring that the user using the web service has the right to use or not. Authentication is also done to track users' activity. There are several options that can be considered for this purpose. Application-level authentication, HTTP digest and HTTP basic authentication, client certificates. 3. Network security. This is a serious issue which requires tools to filter web service traffic. 15. What is addressing in RESTful web services? Addressing refers to locating a resource or multiple resources lying on the server. It is analogous to locate a postal address of a person. This is the end of our REST API interview questions. We hope you enjoyed learning with YQ Academy. Until next time, goodbye.